Y'all already know what it is. Jay Williams, Let's Live Life, and we're back. Some of the saddest stories I heard from guys while locked up. Children dying, girlfriends dying, parents dying, and guys doing time behind these deaths. Y'all know I done seen it, man. Let's relive it. So I've told y'all in past stories that in being the tattoo man in prison, you're going to deal with a lot of different people. You're going to deal with a lot of different situations. You're going to hear different things. People are going to open up and share more with you than they would the average person. Maybe not more than they'll tell their cellmate if they get along with them, or whoever they consider to be their best friend in there. But for the most part, you find out a lot more about people at times than you want to. You find out things in the midst of tattooing somebody, in that moment of them being underneath that needle and feeling that pain. People will start to talk and share things with you. Now, in going to Jersey this past week, it made me think of my homeboy I was locked up with named Jerz. And we called him Jerz because he was, originally from Jersey. Jerz would move here, live in Norfolk. Him and his girl moved here from Jersey. Shortly after they got here, they were staying with his mom. They got an apartment. His girl gets pregnant. They have a baby. Jerz is a drug dealer. Sells dope, sells coke. Told me he would sell anything that was in demand. He said, hey, if they wanted it, I get it, and I make sure I kept my hands on it. And that's what I did, he said. He said, I didn't work. He said, I was a drug dealer. He said, I'd be out all times of the night running around selling dope, selling crack, and selling coke. Not uncommon. It's a lot of guys' stories. It was my story for a while. But I always worked in the midst of my madness, unless I had warrants or something. Then I just turned to the streets and just grind. Me and Jerz was a light-skinned dude, about 5'10", 5'11", about 185 pounds. And me and Jerz were cool, man, for the most part. Me and Jerz would kick it sometimes. He'd get some weed, come through, smoke his weed with me. I'd smoke with him. And it all started off of me doing a tattoo, this big tattoo on his forearm. Jerz had me draw up the subway scene of, I guess, where he lived at in New Jersey. I don't know. He brought me the pattern, and it was like the subway train going up his back, and it was turning, going into like this dark tunnel looking thing. And there was these silhouettes of all these people in the window, and then above the tunnel was like a silhouette of the city of New Jersey in the background. He brings it to me. I like the drawing. I said, there's a couple things I want to change on it, but yeah, it's a good pattern. I can freak it. I can do something with this. Jerz would come to my cell, and I would schedule people to keep there from being conflict, and there was always conflict. I'll do a video on that one day. But I scheduled Jerz in. He comes in my cell for the first sitting. We just get the line work done. He sits down. I get the pattern on his back. It actually took me like 2 times to get this pattern right, because it was 4 sheets of paper that had to be put on. And then they had to be lined up so all the lines are symmetrical and everything, flowed the way it should, the way the pattern looked. I get the pattern on, we sit down, and in that session that night, I got everything, all the line work done, all the outlines. I got all the bold lines put in, the thinner lines towards the center. Our next session, we're going to start shading at the top, and I'm going to start working my way down. I let that heal up, and during that session, me and Jerz talked a whole bunch. And he told me he was in there for something along the lines of a bunch of drug charges, a gun charge, and an involuntary manslaughter charge. Something along those lines. I'm not sure if I'm right on the quoting of it. And that somebody he loved had died and that he was responsible for it. We didn't get much more into it. He told me this towards the end of me getting all the line work done on his back. And it would be about a week and a half, probably about 10 days before he came in again, sat down in the cell. We got into the shading part of the tattoo. What I'm about to tell you was rough to hear, but it was the reality of what happened in Jerz's case. We're sitting there and I'm shading Jerz's back, and we're talking about, I'm like, what do you want to do next? Like, are you done with tattoos after this, or you want to do some more? He's like, no, I want to do my chest, and I want to kind of do an angel scene for my daughter. And I was like, all right. Well, when he said angel scene, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if he's wanting to do his daughter's name and angels and banners, that his daughter's most likely dead. She's deceased. So we get to talking as I'm tattooing his back. And I was like, damn, dog, your daughter died? And it took him a couple minutes, man, maybe 2-3 minutes. He didn't even respond. He just sat there hunched over while I shaded on his back. And then he was like, yeah, my daughter died, man. I said, that sucks, man. How old was she? He's like, she was 5. I said, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I said, if you don't want to talk about it, it's cool. You know what I mean? I get it, man. That's rough, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm a father. I hate hearing this type of stuff. He was like, nah, it's all right, man. He was like, that's got, that's one of the major reasons that I'm here in prison now. Which threw me for a loop, because when somebody says something like that, you think, wait a minute, did you kill your kid? So I said, what do you mean, man? And he was like, man, I don't even like to talk about it, but it is what it is. I fuck with you, so we could talk about it. I said, all right. So he goes on to tell me, he said, man, like I told you, I was a dope dealer, coke dealer, crack dealer, pill dealer, whatever you wanted. I get it for you. I was that dude. I was hustle man on the streets. I had everything. Jimmy Crack Cone, I don't care. I sold it. He said, so we're staying up Norfolk, me, my baby mama, my little girl, my only child. He said, and I'm trapping out this apartment. And everywhere I went, I took my gun with me. I always took my gun with me. He said, so I'm all high one night, liquored up, drinking the Henny, smoking blunts. He said, I'd started dibbling and dabbling in the dope and didn't nobody know. He said, I would, hit the dope here, hit the dope there, taking little bumps of dope when nobody was looking. He said, I wouldn't say I had a habit, but at the same time, I can't say if I had a habit or not because I always had dope around. So I never ran out, but I was doing it daily. He said, one night, man, I'd been drinking. I got a bottle of Henny. I'm smoking blunts and shit. He said, as usual, nobody's looking. I'm in the back bedroom. I'm bagging up dope, but as I'm bagging it up, I'm taking little bumps here and there dope. He said, I get everything bagged up that, I'm supposed to go drop off and do for the night. And I get a call and I rush out and I leave my gun laying on the bed. He said, I wouldn't get far, maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles down the street. I'm not, far from the house. When I realized I left my gun, he said, I got to go back and get my gun. Because where I'm going, I don't want to get caught slipping without a gun. He said, I pull up into the apartment complex. I'm coming up the staircase, and I hear a gunshot go off. So where I lived at, it wasn't uncommon to hear gunshots. He said, so I didn't think much of it. I go into the house, I go into the apartment, and as soon as I get to the door, I hear my baby mama screaming. He said, I go into the back bedroom, and my daughter is laid over in between the bed and the dresser, and she has a hole through the side of her chin and out the side of her head. He said, my gun was cocked, loaded, hammer back, laying on the bed, and my little girl walked over, picked it up, and pointed it upwards, and it went off. And it shot her underneath her chin, and it came out the backside of her head. As he's telling me this, I'm still shading, but I've lost all focus. I've lost all sense of time, reality, and what's going on, because I, as a dad, I couldn't imagine dealing with what this guy's telling me happened. So Jerz tells me, he says, I'm sitting in the floor and I'm holding her. He was like, and there's just blood everywhere. He said, there's blood all over me. He said, my baby mama's screaming, but it feels like she's 1,000 miles away. He's like, everything is kind of like want. Like I'm trying to grasp what's going on and it's not feeling like reality. He said you can smell the mixture of blood and gunpowder in the air. He said the room smells like a gun was just shot off in there. And there's just this disgusting smell of blood that can only be accompanied with large amounts of blood and somebody being hurt bad. This isn't like if you cut your finger, you're not going to smell it. But when you sustain that type of wound and there's that much blood, that's what you're going to smell, especially once it gets all over your clothes. So he said, I'm sitting there and I'm holding my baby girl and my baby mama is screaming at the top of her lungs, oh my God, and she's screaming at me. He's like, I'm holding my girl, she's swinging on me, she's slapping me, hitting me, what have you done, what have you done? He said, and then the next thing I know, it's like everything just kind of goes quiet. He said, but I pick up on her on the phone and she's talking to the 911 dispatcher telling them, y'all need to get here and y'all need to get here fast. He's like, but it's too late. As I'm holding her, she is dead. He's like, her eyes are barely open and there is no sign of life in them. They're not closed all the way. They're just slightly open. My 5-year-old is, laying in my lap dead. He said, I can hear the ambulances. I can hear the police cars coming. I lay my little girl on the floor and I tell my baby mama, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go. I got warrants, I gotta go. There's nothing I can do. He said he grabbed his gun, got up, ran out the apartment building, got in his car, and he was passing the police and the ambulances as they were pulling into the apartment complex. He was pulling out. So he went to his homeboy's house that night. He called over to his girl and detectives got on the phone, told him they needed to speak to him. They know it was an accident. These things happen. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy, but he's not making it any better by not coming to them and talking to them. He's already a convicted felon. It's a stolen firearm. When he ran out the apartment, he took the gun with him, which is part of the crime, and he left a whole bunch of drugs. The drugs that he didn't bag up that night were left in the closet. All that was found by the police. There's drug paraphernalia throughout the apartment they get their hands on. So he said he stashes his car at his homeboy's house because he doesn't want to get pulled in the car. And he's already got warrants on drug charges pending that he didn't go to court for on another case. He said everybody he would call, his mom, the girl's mom, would spaz on him. Like they hated his guts. He said, Jay, I couldn't even go to the funeral. I didn't even see her get laid to rest. He said, in the movies, like you see the guy standing off in the distance. He said, I already knew detectives were going to be there and the police were going to be there hoping I'd show up. He's like, I didn't even get to lay her to rest, man. He's like, to this day, I've never even seen her. I've seen pictures of her tombstone, but I've never even been there. He's telling me this stuff, and like I said, I'm just continuing to shade. But it's hard for me to focus at this point because I'm trying to wrap my head around what he's just told me, and I'm trying to focus at the same time on what I got going on. He said, so a couple weeks have gone by, about 3 weeks now. I can't visit the places I used to visit. I can't go hang out at the houses I used to hang out at because the police have done got the rundown on everywhere I'm at. Then I ran up to several different people's spots. They're watching people's houses. A couple of the girls I was talking to behind, he said behind my girl's back, then had the police at their house. I'm stuck, He said, so I meet this new girl and we start kicking it. I don't tell her nothing that's going on, nothing about my warrants. He's like, and in the meantime, I'm just drinking myself into a drunken stupor every night. He said, I'm smoking weed heavy. I'm doing dope heavy. I went from doing little bumps of dope to, snorting lines of heroin now. He said, I'm just getting high. He says, I'm riding with the girl one night, man, and something was wrong with her car, something wrong with her plate, something, and she gets pulled. He said, and I'm so fucking drunk and messed up off the heroin that I'm in the passenger seat, just kind of slumped back. He said, the next thing I know, I hear, the girl saying, hey, we're getting pulled. He's like, I lean my head forward and I lean my head back and I go back out. He said, I wake up to a cop tapping on my window and pointing a flashlight, asking me if I'm okay. He said, I told the cop, no, I'm not okay. And the cop said, what's going on? You know, roll the window down. He said, so I rolled the window down and they asked me what was wrong, what was going on. He said, I told him my name and told him, yeah, I'm about to go to jail because I'm responsible for my little girl dying. I got warrants for drugs. I'm sure I got some type of charge for my little girl dying. And he said by now the cops have, you know, ran his name and everything. They've gotten him out the car. He said, and he's standing there in handcuffs and everything's just moving in slow motion. Said he gets booked into the jail and they charge him with the negligent, that's what it was, negligent homicide. The possession of a stolen firearm, possession of stolen firearm by convicted felon. Then he had all these different distribution, attempt to distribute, manufacturing charges because he had the stuff in the bag that he was cutting the dope with. Jerz would go on to be sentenced to 30 years in prison. So he's just told me this whole story as we're sitting there, and it took him a better part of probably 25 minutes to tell you everything I just told you in a couple minutes. I remember I asked Jerz, I said, so you got 30 years and your little girl died. He was like, yeah. I said, well, how do you feel about that? He said, to be honest, Jay, I don't, you know, after losing my little girl, I kind of feel like the 30 years wasn't even justice. He was like, I kind of feel like I should be punished. And this is where I should be. He said, you know, I miss my daughter, man. I'd do anything to go back in time and undo what I did or undo what I was responsible for. But that's not reality. I can't do that. It is what it is, man. He said, my baby mama don't write me. Nobody really writes me. Nobody really messes with me. And they all blame me for the death of my daughter, man. He said, so that's what it is, man. That's what I want to do with my chest is, you know, in memory of her. I ended up doing this chest plate, the two angels, and they're called cherubs or something like that. And they're holding a banner. And the banner's like, you know, flying in the wind. And in the middle, you know, it's got his daughter's name right in the center of his chest. The date she was born on one side of the banner and the date she died on the other side of the banner. Jerz would go on to get shipped probably about a year after this to another institute. He went from where we were at in Greensville to a private prison called Lawrenceville. And it took me a while, man. I thought about everything Jerz had told me over the next few weeks. And it just stuck with me. I thought about all the times I had left guns laying around. Thought about all the times that I did things that could have potentially hurt my little boy. You know, not intentionally, but I mean, it could have. And it was just a crazy story I wanted to share with y'all in hopes that somebody will listen and not make the same mistake. In hopes that if you're somebody that plays with pistols, plays with guns, lives that life, and you're not going to take my advice and stop doing it, you're just going to keep doing it until you get caught and you go to prison, that you at least take the time to think about those around you and how what you do can not only impact your life, but could possibly take the life of someone you love or someone else and leave you with a hole in your heart. Sitting in a prison cell, never being able to say goodbye, never being able to stop by their grave site on the holidays or the birthday because you're locked into a prison cell. Jerz's story was a sad one. He showed me pictures of her. He didn't have many. He had like 3 pictures he had gotten. I think friends of his sent him, you know, those pictures. But it just goes to show you, you never know what you have going on and how it might impact so many more people than just yourself. Jerz told me he had never shot nobody. He said he had been shot at, He said, I'd never shot nobody. He said, the gun my daughter shot herself with, I'd never even fired. He said, like people go down the train tracks and the abandoned buildings and bust the guns off. He's like, I never even fired the gun. The first time the gun was ever shot, it killed my daughter, man. I know this story is going to hit home for a lot of people. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's just one of those things, man, that happens in life. So yeah, that's Jerz's story, man. If anybody knows Jerz, knows of the story and the situation, talk to Jerz. You tell him Jay said hold his head up, man, and continue to pray, man. I wish him the best. And to the little girl and the baby mom, I'm sorry, y'all, to the baby mom, I'm sorry you had to go through that. And to the little girl, rest in peace, rest in heaven. But anyway, these detention centers, these jails, these prisons, these institutes, they're just crazier worlds inside of this already crazy world that we live in. And even though I don't want to say this part, I'm going to say it. Y'all know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to keep y'all entertained. Are you not entertained? And as always, this is Jay Williams. Let's live life. And to all my real ones and the awesome real ones out there, because y'all still watching me. Y'all know how we do, man. Salute. Think about what you do before you do it. Think about how your actions can impact someone else.